Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, travel, food service, and technology. I'm joined today by Niko Karstikko, co-founder and CEO of Bob W. Niko, how are you?
I'm alive. Thank you, Adam. How about yourself?
Uh, yeah, I think I'm almost there. Almost. A few more coffees, because for me here, I'm in Toronto. It's 9 a.m. For you, you're in Finland, so it's end of day for you.
That's right. We're in the two opposing ends of the global ice hockey spectrum. So I'm already a few coffees in, so I'm good.
And yet here we are talking about trends that affect the whole world of hospitality, as well as the larger pool that is real estate.
I guess so.
Okay, so let's start. Give us the elevator pitch for Bob W.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I guess we're the answer to. We are the professional, institutional answer to the Airbnb generation that's growing up. We are what the modern traveler that's mixing business with pleasure, that's spending a longer time on the road, is looking for. And that is not the traditional hotel in this traditional context anymore. We obviously have tens of millions of Airbnb and Booking.com listings to prove it, that they're looking for something else. Now, we basically have created what we call best of both worlds concept, which is best of the hotel experience, best of the short stay rental experience, package up into this lean lifestyle brand called Bob W. And under the hood, we're a tech company. We make the whole thing run on technology. So on the one hand, we don't screw things up. We remove human error from the most labor intensive industry in the world. And on the other hand, we elevate that experience by creating a full service offering with self-service apps, with amazing empathetic hosting by Bob W. and a marketplace. So we are full service, even though we don't have the operational risk, the costs, or the issues around breakfasts and gyms and things like that. And that's basically where we're at today, where we operate. We started 5 years ago. Today we operate 45 Aparthotels properties in 18 cities in 10 countries. Total portfolios over 85 properties, or 5,000 units. And probably, if not the fastest growing, one of the most fastest growing hospitality operators and brands coming out of Europe.
So there's a ton to unpack there, but where I want to go to start off with in revealing all this is where you started, because your career, if anyone just looks at your LinkedIn, it didn't start in hospitality. It started in tech, in marketing, and in other fields. And traditionally, if you're starting in those fields, the going motto is "Don't enter hospitality. It's too much for too little return." So when did you sort of see the opportunity to establish a hospitality brand that used tech as part of its IP to really drive performance?
Life works in mysterious ways. And I think, I mean, my background there, actually, one of my first summer job was actually in this very town I'm at right now for the weekend, which is in Hanko, Finland, a beach town in southwest Finland, and was a bed and breakfast manager that I ended up as by accident. So, and there I got paid for responsibility because instead of hours, and I basically hustled. There was the guy who got fired and in the front desk, or he left, I can't remember exactly. And I was only the dude who was doing the breakfasts in the morning. And the owner said, "Hey, can you look out for this while we figure it out?" And instead of sticking around at the front desk, I put a nice piece of paper on the front, or a print in a frame, along with a phone next to it, and say, "Hey, call this number. We'll be there within 5 minutes." And then I moved the booking, the booking diary from a piece of paper to Excel and print, and I printed it daily. And I went about doing other stuff around town and got paid for the responsibility as opposed to sticking around there for the hours. So maybe, ironically, then 25 years later, that's what we're doing by having a tech-operated hospitality brand that doesn't have front desks. So maybe I was cunning or lazy. I can't figure it out. But that was actually that was early days. I was 13, 14 years old. But you're right. I mean, my actual career took a very different turn. So I'm Finnish originally, but actually grew up in the UK and the US and France, and did a bunch of corporate stuff. Latest worked in banking at Barclays. And, to be honest with you, it wasn't for me. I'm this, high energy, low concentration, typical entrepreneurial type. Um, and a corporate world was a very structured place for a person like that. But it was a good school and learned a lot of things. So was in the financial industry, but so was at Barclays in the latest turn of the career. And then the tie was getting a little too tight around the neck. So I moved back to Finland under the guise of a master's, because in Finland, not only is university free, but you actually get paid to show up, which is pretty crazy. You got to graduate though, and get the score, get the points, or you got to pay it back, which sadly I had to, but things worked out all right, because
Sadly.
that was my, that was my facade. And I wanted to start a tech company, I wanted to start a company, and tech was obviously has been a big source of innovation, and really center of attention when it comes to starting businesses, obviously in the past decades. So, and Finland has an amazing tech startup scene that really bats above its weight. And we've got a bunch of unicorns coming out of this region, and have had a bunch of unicorns. So anyway, so I went to that. So I've been a tech entrepreneur. Last company was a fitness activities marketplace. So North Americans might know ClassPass. We were a proxy competitor. So 15,000 gyms, yoga studios, rock climbing arenas. We raised 4 million euros venture cash and expanded from Nordics to the UK and the East Coast USA and the tri-state area. And then eventually exited that business in 2016. So that had nothing to do with hospitality, right? But actually, when I had that fitness activities marketplace, it started with an American dude. I went to college back at USC way back when. And so I was always on the road, and I was a startup founder. So I was broke, needed to get some money. And there was this new platform, circa 2011, that I just kind of gained popularity in Europe, called Airbnb. And, rented my apartment when I was on the road, and then rented my brother's apartment, and then rented the summer house, and then rented another apartment and got an investment apartment. So I had a little side hustle of 7 apartments. So whilst I was a tech entrepreneur by day, by night, I had this little side hustle of 7 properties. And I loved hosting the people, loved showing, as a guy who's lived around the world, you kind of get like, I feel like peeps who travel a lot and lived in different countries, you become like a sober patriot to where you're from. You appreciate the good stuff and the bad stuff, and you become very kind of like, I want to show the good stuff for you guys. So I really enjoyed that. And yeah, so that was kind of the drumbeat that then eventually, when I sold the tech company, I wanted to go to travel in Asia and catch a career break, because I was felt pretty burnt out at that point. Not to the hosting stuff, but the tech stuff, and ended up figuring out, hey, I can. How am I going to manage this thing if I'm in Asia? I don't have any employees, and you figure it out. 6 months of soap in a closet, chat-based customer service, good to-do lists for the cleaners, etc. And you figure out, okay, I can make it happen. But at the same time, you understand the shortcomings of the sort of amateur hosting, and figure out, if you were in control of the technology and the full stack, not just the technology, the hardware, software, and the physical space, you could create something that wouldn't just match the expectation of the modern traveler, but for the traveler rate looking for a hotel, you could actually exceed it in a consistent level. And that's probably the drumbeat.
Right. So the whole term you mentioned earlier is this one called lean lifestyle. And that really ties into a lot of the programming that you would put in place, from combining both design, FF&E, and the prop tech and the cloud tech that you would have there. Can you
Yep.
describe and unpack what you mean by lean lifestyle?
Well, I guess we probably throw around a couple of different terms in this industry, and usually when we're talking to industry gang, trying to help anchor, but we can call it affordable luxury, we can call it lifestyle, boutique, but really it's about the modern traveler is looking for something different than the traditional hotel can offer. Airbnb and that world has created this window of understanding what these people are looking for. We want to live like locals. We want to be independent travelers that feel like you're a part of that neighborhood. We want a chance to have a night in. We want to have an opportunity to wash our clothes, all of that stuff. So, um, so from a lifestyle perspective, the consumer tastes, certainly in the sort of 20 to 45-year-old urban middle class, have been heavily evolving, as witnessed by the proliferation of the Airbnbs and the Booking.com apartments and the STR en masse. And so when people are looking for uh, this kind of product, we want to answer to that and unmask or, remove the horse flaps of what a 3-star or 4-star hotel should be, and to really pick the best of the both sides, or best of both worlds in the experience in that.
So within what you said earlier about this phrase called lean lifestyle, that is affordable luxury. It's bringing together certain design features, FF&E, prop tech, availability of cloud tech, all those things coming together to give a stamp of approval for an elevated experience. Can you unpack how Bob W meets this emerging trend?
as I mentioned earlier, that the Airbnb generation has really grown up. So, we've all been there as active users, or most of us have been there as active users and consumers of the Airbnb type of experience. And, you know, we've we've felt the sense of, you know, the classics hit or miss issues of a fragmented industry. Do I trust the host? Do I trust the pictures? Yeah, I trust the pictures, but isn't in the ghetto. What about key pickup? Will the washing machine actually work this time? And all of that. And like I've found in my travels, I ended up at the Hiltons and the Marriotts of the world, not because I wanted a hotel, but it was just like, it was just too much work to have trust in, okay, like, am I going to find the right apartment that's going to satisfy the needs that I've got on the road? And so it was easier to stay at hotels, even though that's what you were looking for. Now, the modern traveler, on the one hand, through this proliferation of this, has shown through the demand that there's this massive desire for better value, for this sense of living like a local, this independent travel where you can have a night in and cook, or you can wash your clothes on the road. You can be an authentic, genuine participant of a neighborhood, of a city in this kind of different context. Now, combine that with that's the good stuff. But then often this fragmented industry has let people down. Now, as we've grown up and matured, what do you appreciate from the hotels? That's the consistency, the quality, the professionalism, the commercial grade. The walls aren't made out of paper. They're a certain standard, and that you don't hear the other guy doing whatever they're doing in the other room. And of course, when you're buying, you get more value for your money. And when we buy 50 couches instead of one, or 50 apartments instead of one, you can have a higher design aesthetic for that same value of money, etc. So the best of both worlds is, again, from that hotel, the good stuff that's consistent, but then again, from the short stay rentals, the utilities, amenities, living like a local, and hosting. Why hosting? Because anybody who's done enough Airbnbs knows that the best experiences that you've had are made or broken by a host. And almost always the best hosts, that have created this amazing experience, by default, you don't actually meet them. And to us, that was always proof that you can have an amazing, empathetic customer experience, a customer service experience that feels like somebody's there for you and is taking care of you, but you don't actually have to meet them. And for us, that always then gave us the confidence that we can actually then leverage technology instead of people to create this host-driven experience. And that's where the name Bob W., which is the avatar of the perfect host, he is he speaks 10 languages. He's clearly well educated, but a man of the people. He is super approachable. And unlike a normal host, he does not sleep. He doesn't need a lunch break. He doesn't call in sick. He answers your messages in less than 2 minutes. And if you got a problem, you can always call him, or one of his colleagues is going to be around the door. We don't need a front desk. We don't need a customer service layer or a on-call customer service layer physically in the building, or a front desk to go with it. And so basically that really is when we had that aha moment. Okay, we can create a whole new category of hospitality. That's the best of these two sides, driven by this hosted experience. And what does that translate into to the guest today? Well, that translates into having this, lean luxury experience in terms of an apartment, which has the reward of coming into a nice hotel. It has the utilities of an apartment. It has the full service, breakfast, gyms, early checkouts, late check-ins, all available through the app. It has a great empathetic hosted feel, great customer service, mainly chat-based. And it's got design that gets local, that is based on sustainable local design. So you get local designers, artists, artisans, etc. And effectively, it is what you get Airbnb experience on steroids with unseen consistency. And I think that really has propelled us to be Europe's best rated international hotel chain based on public ratings at 4.7 out of 5, net promoter score 76 or 77 last year. And that is really because it is that answer to the Airbnb generation that's growing up. And we can provide, finally, I guess we can provide better value for the guest. Why? Because we've got 1/7 of the employees of a comparable hotel asking for a comparable nightly rate. 6/7 is the technology. And yet, as the ratings would prove, customers really feel the opposite of being alone, that they feel like they're being hosted and they're getting value for money. Us probably speaks to a broader trend of we are having good product market fit for that new generation of traveler, but also it speaks to this trend of unchaining what a hospitality should be and instead solving the customer problems of the target audience who you're serving.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And I was astounded, blown away by saying that you can get away with 1/7 the labor of a traditional hotel. That's proof alone that hotels all over in every single real estate, whether it's commercial, multifamily, needs to invest in tech to realize those OpEx savings. That's incredible. So bravo. And we don't need to dive into the IP that is part of just how you operate and the technology play that you make that happen. One thing I do want to pick out is you're talking about consistency and trust. That is in essence what a brand is. And realistically here, what a brand is also its trust in the face of numerous choices. And that speaks alone to what we're seeing on the ground as a trend in 2025, which is that Airbnbs are traditionally alternative accommodations, but there's so much choice now that really it's the accommodation sector. They're more than traditional hotels, but we can't really recognize trends until in hindsight. So we know right now that we have this niche of people that want to be in short-term rentals. They want to live like locals, but they also want the consistency and feel of a hotel within a serviced apartment layout. Where is this going? What's next for Bob W? Where do you see the world going and how you fit into it?
Listen, I think there's a massive consolidation and professionalization of the short stay rental space. Long gone are the days of early adopters, one of which myself as well. It was one of the coolest feelings to show up in, LA and rent a dude's couch for $20. Not only was it great value for money, all of a sudden you're in the heart of it all, and you got a local buddy who will show you, how to get around town. That was like that aha moment of the early days of Airbnb. How I experienced it was absolutely amazing. But the reality today is that, a big part of that stock is some ladies or some dude's third apartment with the cheapest IKEA stuff in there. Um, so it, and as this mass, like in Europe, there's over 4 million short stay rental listings. Last time I checked, there was a bigger market for short stay rentals than actually in the US. Albeit that, of course, now when a lot of short stays are going away from also city centers, you're seeing people trending towards that direction as well. But the point being is we saw a massive proliferation of short stay rentals, and the early adopter days are long gone. I remember the early adopter days. I remember, going to Los Angeles and staying at a dude's couch for $20 and getting breakfast from him and having a bonus friend in town. I still have the guy's number on my WhatsApp, and I don't think I've messaged him in the past few years, but I could, and I'm sure he'd remember as I remember him. But now, with even just Europe is more than 4 million short stay rental listings on the platforms. We have, it's really this market has come to a level of maturity. And now, as always, as markets mature, now the differentiation comes. And, some dude's third apartment with the cheapest IKEA stuff isn't commanding the interest of the consumer anymore. So from an STR industry perspective, now is the time to start differentiating. Differentiating can be in very many forms. It can be more value for money. It can be quality. And it can be, our cases, elevating that into a more hotel-like experience. It can be, doing more unique stays. It can be adding services. It can be increasing consistency, which is obviously something we do. We are in a sector of hospitality that doesn't have standards. Therefore, it's even more important that our brand represents a standard. And so I think this differentiation and standards, because brands equal standards that can be delivered in many ways, but standards nevertheless, those are massive macro trends. And third one is, because there's been this proliferation of these alternative accommodation space, it has opened up the consumers and the operators' minds that you do not have to operate the 3-star hotel in the way that it's always been operated with those horse flaps on, thinking this is what it's got to be, because the consumer has opened up and shown they don't need that. So there's an opportunity for us to create new categories of hospitality, something that we've pioneered in this sort of hotel Airbnb hybrid. But outdoor hospitality, consistent networks of individual apartments, luxury, budget, student, social, communal, etc. There's a massive opportunity to now really, remove those last bits of what a hospitality should be, that is bygones of an era where mass standardization of hospitality happened. And that's not the reality we live in today. Which is a great opportunity in the industry for everybody, for consumers, guests, and operators alike.
So I want to pick out 2 observations that relate to Bob W. from my own travels. Number 1 is, wherever I go, one of the things I love to do is I love to go into a local supermarket and just see what's there. But I typically am not buying things because I'm staying in a hotel room and I don't have a kitchen. Number 2 is, one of the limits I have on staying a longer time is that I don't have access to laundry. So therefore I can't do laundry. Therefore, eventually you run out of underwear. And what those 2...
Or you got to pack a bunch of underwear, a lot of underwear.
Just in case, right? You never know. So all these trends speak to what we call in hotel parlance, the metric is LOS, length of stay. And I imagine that you have the keys to the kingdom to speak to how Bob W punches above its weight or above index in terms of LOS. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Length of stay is an interesting game. It's hard to actually get it right from a revenue management perspective, but we see it as, well, first of all, what's our average length of stay in European capital cities is 1.5 nights. We average about 4.5 nights. So it's
Whoa.
still short, but it's
Yeah.
three times longer than a hotel. Um, Now, in that bell curve, you can fit a lot of 1 and 2 nighters, but there's also some couple of weeks, people for a couple of weeks, people for months. Our promise is you got everything you need to stay for days, weeks, or months. And we hold that true, not just for consumers, but also B2B, which is roughly speaking, a little bit less than half of our business, 40 to half, depending on markets where we're at. Length of stay is important for us because, well, first of all, our product wants to offer you that flexibility. So if we were just one-nighters, we would be failing on why we would have kitchens to be have kitchens in the first place. We love it because that gives us flexibility in the distribution systems. So we're not just going on to the hotel world. We're also eating in on the Airbnb type of world. We are also doing relocations. We are doing corporate travel, all of that stuff. So it gives us flexibility because also our target demographic, the 20 to 45-year-old urban middle class, the modern traveler, is looking for flexibility. They're going for one night there, but they're going for 3 weeks there, etc. So length of stay for us is about catering to that broader set of use cases. And then also, of course, trying to play a lot of optimization in terms of which clients do we want to award the night. That sounds pomp. We're glad to have our guests, but who are we going to focus on? What kind of traveler are we going to, get November or Monday, Thursdays? And we clean once per week. So, of course, the theoretical perfect customer stays for 6 nights, which is still paying for nights, not weeks or months, but still doesn't go through that cleaning cycle, which would then mean we change your sheets and towels and all of that. Of course, it's always at the end of the day, it's GOP of your business. How much operating profit are you actually creating there? But I think the main driver for us always has been is that we have the flexibility and the resilience, which makes us as a business, well, first of all, having survived and thrived through the pandemic, because the product works for somebody staying for 4 weeks that doesn't want to see anybody else and doesn't want a front desk and wants to cook themselves, which worked for the pandemic pretty good. We didn't design it for that. So I think length of stay is a piece in revenue management, which has been historically neglected. Of course, STR, individual apartments, length of stay is a slightly different game to us. That still has a kind of a hotel building, but you can play the Tetris game. So we actually build a lot of our own software out, and we do a lot of analysis on length of stay patterns, length of stay on the booking curve, as in you get closer to the days, you get the last minutes are more for the few nights than somebody who books 3 weeks are likely going to be a little bit more farther in advance. So we do a lot of analysis around that because that does reflect profitability.
And within that length of stay, we're talking about data analysis. What else do you see in terms of what features are driving the length of stay extensions, the extended stays? And can you tie that back using data to saying, it was the laundry, the kitchen, but it was this third thing here that really convinced me to stay for 14 nights instead of 7. Are you able
Yeah.
to run those sorts of analyses?
Yeah. So we've got 45 live properties, and we've got 3 of them are hotels, which will eventually get conversion elements to it. But the rest of them are Aparthotels. So we can also see some variance of where we actually get customers to stay still in those markets, almost double compared to normal hotels. But that's got to do with probably length of stay features are, you know, going to be driven, like you said, with the basics, with the kitchens, washing machines, dishwashers, everything you need to show up with a backpack and stay for days, weeks, or months. But actually, we are the only provider at this scale who has a marketplace of breakfasts, gyms, early check-ins, late checkouts, additional cleanings. So we were the first one that introduced early check-ins, late checkouts, for example, fully algorithmically. So we can promise you 8 weeks in advance to get in at 9 a.m. or the morning of at 9 a.m. with your last minute doing it, because we can play that Tetris game, operational Tetris game, and count the averages basically. So can we promise it for you? From these features, what we found, and partially also why we continued to develop them, is our breakfast and gym. Now, again, we don't have restaurants in our building, never do. Remember, my last startup was a fitness activities marketplace, an app and a third-party gym, local gym down the road, or a yoga studio. And that was always about how do you create this amazing experience that feels like it's a natural part of the app or the service, but actually there's no integration because the systems are all so different. And so we're the only ones that offers from the breakfast and the gyms, and overwhelmingly corporate customers want to put breakfast on the company card. Now, try to get an apartment where there is just about any market in Europe where there's a breakfast on offer. Those are far and few. And then when you combine that with the gym as well, which we find, again, we are 20 to 45-year-old urban middle class. This is one of the most active generations, the most health conscious generations that we are dealing with. And as we spend longer time on the road, we want routine to continue on the road. I mean, if we behaved like our dads behaved when we traveled on business trips or holidays for that matter, we'd be way boozed up, huge tummy, broke because we, partied too much and had too much, souvenirs we had to bring back home every time we showed up. Nowadays, life continues on the road. So we always have, again, no gym in our building. We have a local gym partner within 500 yards, 500 meters of the building. And I guarantee you it's a better gym with real local people compared to a hotel gym in just about any case, except for maybe some super top 5-star fitness orientated hotels. And those two features has surprisingly been, for this length of stay, and a really important factor, because who wants to pay for breakfast themselves if you can chuck it on the company card? And the other one is you want to continue your routine going on the road. So we have always gyms included in the price. It's a real gym. And then we actually have yoga mats and complimentary online yoga studio. And we see that those, in a way, simple routine things really go a long way. And the fact that our competition, be that Aparthotel or other tech-powered operators or individual apartments, can cater to that. So if you're filtering an apartment, you're shit out of luck with all those extra services usually.
Well, you're preaching to the choir as somebody who is a big wellness advocate, and fitness is a big part of that. And I got to say, I've been to a lot of hotels, and you go down to the gym, and it is like they haven't changed anything since 1975, and is doing a disservice to that. And you're spot on about how younger people have different values, and they want to stay active while on the road. I can't speak to say that that's 100% of people, but there's enough of that, whether it's a niche or just mainstream, there's enough of that to carve a very successful worldwide business out of it.
I think we all in hospitality need to look out for our differentiators. And I think that's our thing, but it is a massive macro trend. And I think that there's a lot of legs on it for concepts outside of ours.
Right. So we've talked about the OpEx. Now let's just, to dovetail this, let's shift into the CapEx, because getting to 45 properties and then I guess a total of 85, including those just under management.
85 if we count the pipeline.
Right. So 85, including the pipeline since 2019. That is huge scaling. What's your CapEx structure, and how did you do that initial cap raise? Let's start with the cap raise and then talk about the trials and tribulations of going through the development and building conversions.
So today we've raised 70 million euros. So I guess that's USD pushing 80 million bucks, and well, a little bit less than that. So why have we managed to get so much growth capital on board? Is we do triple the margin compared to a traditional hotel. We have 1/7 of the employees, which also means that our initial work, initial upfront cost expansion is minimal. We recently, well, not recently, over a year ago, we expanded to Amsterdam with 2 properties, one of 128 units and the other one 30 units. We hired 3 people, three great people, but 3 people. Now, if we were a hotel chain, we would have built 2 teams,
Yeah.
2 GMs, and the technology allows us to be able to move so much lighter that our CapEx costs borne by our own activities, not the actual directly the building itself, are minimal. And that, of course, was the initial investment in the technology. And then, we first opened in Tallinn and Helsinki, and then we figured, okay, nobody's going to invest big money in us because we're in the periphery of Europe. So we thought that, screw it, let's try to find properties in the biggest, toughest markets in Europe. So we went to Madrid and London and pounded the pavement for 6 months and found our first properties in London and Madrid. And now we have the 2 mega cities of Europe. Let's roll with this. And we're able to show that the metrics, the performance, as well as the reviews, or the financial performance and the reviews, was able to not only just keep up, but continue beating the market from that perspective. Then in terms of our cost, of course, early days, landlords are like, that who the hell are these guys? A guy who hasn't done any real estate or hospitality, and my dear German co-founder Sebastian, who's this sort of German stereotype on steroids, and he's hadn't been in the hospitality space. He's a finance background guy, an operational real estate background guy, but early days. This is the big barrier of entry into our industry, especially in the commercial properties. Everybody just wants the McDonald's or the Marriott because they've been around for 100 years and they'll be around for another 100 years, and they'll pay the rent or make sure the management agreement gets the returns that they need to get. Our CapEx cost initially was, of course, through the roof because nobody wanted to help pay for the renovations, and they didn't want to pay for the furniture and all that stuff. And then they wanted big deposits from us. So the initial first buildings were very expensive for us, of course. Then the pandemic happened, and there was first everybody was kind of holding steady in Europe for 1 year and not really transacting. And then the ones that really wanted to or needed to transact, we were the first ones on the market because we're like, hey, if we're going to survive the pandemic, we're going to thrive after it. So we were actually looking for properties very actively when most of Europe and the hospitality space was kind of not doing that. And then we got a little bit maybe better deals at that point in terms of upfront CapEx cost. And then eventually we've just been able to replicate that and have that increased track record and that success and commercial viability of the business. We've reached profitability despite doubling our size. We've at least doubled our size every year for the last 5 years. So largest annual growth was 8x revenue. And we've done that now and reach profitability as well whilst doing that. So now I would say the tide really turned from a capex perspective, but only like 2 years ago, where all of a sudden all we got to do is show up with a bank guarantee for the most part, and a landlord is comfortable to take over that cost of refurbing and furniture and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you've put in the work. You ground it out, you bootstrapped, and now you're a known commodity, and people understand the business model.
And there's of course a macro trend which helps. So let's not just give Bob the only pat in the back there, even though he's done a good job. Is the other one is just commercial apartments, call it service apartments, Aparthotels, multifamily. That is just the most booming macro trend in real estate in the Western world, but it's missing players, and that's where luck favors the prepared mind. But somehow we got lucky and ended up at the right place at the right time.
Okay, so 85 places, 85 Bob W's, including current and in the pipeline. Is that all in Europe, or do you have global ambitions?
Now, of course, we have global ambitions. Eventually, we'll end
Yeah,
up
yeah,
to Mars as well.
yeah.
But I think we're a few years away from development there. Still got to figure out some logistics. But no, all jokes aside, our company's vision is to be the most loved hospitality brand for the next generation of traveler. We are well underway with that, with Europe being the best rated hotel operator, best rated international hotel operator in Europe. But it is just 5,000 units, or I guess we're closing 5,500. That's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, what's Marriott at? 1.6 million. And that's the massive opportunity in the short stay rental space. It is fragmented as hell. We are the pioneer. We are a market leader in our space on the entire continent. We are small fry still in the grand scheme of things. There is room for the next generations of Hiltons and Marriotts in the short stay rental space. And the better news is there's going to be even more flavors. So there's going to be the next Hilton of the outdoors, and the next Hilton's the Marriotts of the STR, of the urban offering, and all that stuff. So it is a massive opportunity. So for us, the next 1 to 2 years is still really pushing heavy on Europe, but also simultaneously starting to make inroads to North America, Southeast Asia, Middle East.
Awesome. And now I'm wondering, I guess, just to close things out, is there anything important you want to touch on, or anything you want to talk about in terms of future trends and how Bob W is meeting that demand?
Oh, I think we covered a lot of these, the main themes. I think the one thing we didn't cover is sustainability. It gets lost now with all this global political turmoil that we're seeing now, but we are in the middle of a climate crisis. We are also, to a certain degree, neglecting that the younger generation is far more militant about fixing this than our generation is. And since as STR space, we don't have the legacy that the inevitable physical built world of the old hotel chains has. So that we have the responsibility, but more importantly, we've got the opportunity to really do something differently in terms of being a more sustainable sector of the industry. So we became the first climate neutral hospitality operator in 2020. We run on 100% renewable electricity across the board. We have over 30 initiatives in the company to factually reduce our emissions. We have fully offset our emissions, which of course is paying for your sins. So let's not give too many pats on the back with that. But importantly, that requires measuring your emissions. And that's the important part. Nobody ain't going to bring it down and improve it unless we're measuring it, because If we're not doing so, we don't know where to start and where to improve. And did our actions actually have any meaningful change to that? So we felt this way for now for 5 years. So we publish the guest night emissions. Well, first of all the numbers, but guest night emissions, not just down to the building, but each apartment type. So you can compare our studio to our 2-bedroom apartment and our emissions, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, to oversimplify all of the emissions. And why do we do that? Because the modern traveler cares about sustainability. Now, if you care about sustainability, just like, let's say you care about calories. So if Adam, I give you 2 chocolate bars, one has all being the same. This one has 80 calories and this has 120, and you care about calories, you're going to want the 81. Now, if consumers can't make educated decisions and they're just dependent on nice adjectives, which is not going to give you the understanding, we are, as an industry, are not going to serve the needs of the modern traveler, nor are we not going to engage in this positive competition to actually bring down those emissions. So, if you travel and you care about price, you care about location, you care about design, you care about it as a pool. Well, if you care about sustainability, we should have a simple metric that we can all get behind with. Now, we did not find an all-encompassing metric in the industry, so we built our own. It's called the Legit Standard, LEGIT. You can read about it from our website, and it'll take you towards the association website as well. And that was just to be the all-encompassing number of a per guest night emission, just apples to apples. I think the call to action is that, this is a great opportunity for this part of the hospitality industry that doesn't have the legacy to do the right thing, which is going to end up in our favor and give us the ability to get the trust from the modern generation of traveler, which, by the way, is great, has great economic viability. Recent Skift reports clearly show that consumers, particularly sub 40-year-olds, are more than happy to spend extra to make the sustainable choice. So I guess that's the trend. And if I had a call to action, that is measure, do the accounting of the emissions as an operator, and let's start publicizing. Let's start having an apples to apples metrics. Nobody's perfect. We ain't perfect, but we sure as hell feel confident that the consumer deserves to know.
Yeah, the first comment I have is the old Peter Drucker adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. That's number one.
Amen.
Number two is, I think we're all, or most people are underestimating the sea change that's happening with the young generation, how they view climate change and all the weird weather events that are happening around the world and what's coming with that sea change when millennials and Gen Z are the largest voting bloc together. And dare I say it, but this weird weather will get weirder. And one day it's a German town that gets wiped out by a weird flood. The next day it's fires in Los Angeles. What is tomorrow going to be? And the weirder and weirder these events happen, the more likely people are to vote with their wallets for sustainable choices and looking for brands that have that consistency and that trust that they're going with a net zero partner. So again, hats off to Bob W.
Well, I think, nobody's perfect in this space, but we have an opportunity to work together.
Yeah. It's the process, and you're not getting mired down in bureaucracy. You're making things happen and improving to be net zero. And then eventually maybe there'll be, carbon positive, where you're actually reducing the total carbon that is the leftover of 50 years or 100 years of industrialization. And that's really what we're talking about. Yeah.
March, which I guess we're in April now as we record this. March was the by far the warmest March in the record of the planet. So, I mean, whether you believe in science or not, it's a different thing. But one thing's for sure is that the climate is certainly changing, and as a result of that, if you've ever seen your ice cool in your glass when you're sitting in Florida on a sunny beach, well, that same thing's happening to all the ice caps, and eventually, it's gonna rise the temperature. So, but we're not here to tackle the science part of it. The younger generation of traveler cares about it, and it's time for us to start meeting that need.
Yep. And, thank you for addressing that. And of course, it's just another part of the special sauce that makes Bob W such an incredible brand.
I appreciate you saying that. Day by day, the product's never finished, so we're going to keep at it.
Well, Niko, thanks for coming on the show. It's been fantastic to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.